What's up, everyone? This is going to be part 3 of my breakdown for my comping example that goes along with the Charlie Parker tune Confirmation. Make sure to check out the first 2 parts if you haven't seen them yet to ensure that you could optimally follow along with this video. I'll remind everyone that there's a PDF for this example that is available on my website for only $3, as well as on my Patreon if you want to check it out. I think it could really be helpful for this. I actually just edited this PDF because originally I was slightly lazy when composing a little bit of this when it came to the very beginning of the second and third A sections, and I wasn't really considering the subtle variation in the melody at these points, and I just kept these parts the same as what I was doing in the first A section for this example. And this is also how I originally played this example when I first introduced it in episode 73. Since the focus of today's video is going to be on the second and third A sections of the form, I figured I'd let everyone know that I've since made some slight alterations to these parts and have made these changes in the PDF as well, alright? It's only like 3 new chords, but that's how it's going to be now if you choose to take a look at this PDF, alright? So, if we check out the melody of this tune, we can see that Bird himself was not lazy at all, and he produced quite a bit of variation in the melody for the second and third A section. More than what you'd usually find, I'd say, in these types of AABA 32 bar form kinds of tunes. Typically, the main variations in the melody that we may get are only really in the last 2 bars of the A section, which gives us the common, different ending variations. So you really got to give it up to Bird here for his compositional skills. Since we already went through the whole first A section, we're going to use that as our reference and a point of comparison as we take a look at all the parts that are different in the second and third A section now. So let's begin with the second A section, and just keep in mind again that the reason why I ended up with these variations that I'm going to show you in this video is because of the variation that occurs in the melody at these points. So the possibilities of what you might hear over a variation of something may be different from the original melody or just inspire other kinds of ideas. The opening phrase of the second A section, which is found in the first 2 bars and flows logically right out of the final phrase of the first A section, is already significantly different from the melody in the first A section at this point. Let's take a listen to compare. Here's the first A section. And now here's the second A section, and I'm just going to start it a little bit before at the very end of the first, just so we can hear what it's coming out of, right? Now, although these phrases are clearly different, they both have the note A natural that falls on the downbeat of 1 in the first bar. So in the first A section, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So that note. And now in the second A section, coming from the bar before, 1, 2, 3, right? So because they're both landing on that same note in the same spot there, I ended up using the same first F major 7 chord in my example in the second A section here on the downbeat of 1 that I use at the beginning of the first A section, right? Because they have that note A on top, so it works in both situations. So while this video is really about the variations, I figured it'd be good to show at least one instance here where even though I'm working with a different melody or a variation of the original melody, I end up using the same idea, and it's still a good choice that sounds good, even though it's being derived essentially from a different idea. Alright, so the first variation that I have is falling in bar 2 of the second A section here, and it's mainly one different chord that's falling in between the phrases of the melody. Alright, so the first phrase that comes before starts in the measure before, so if I just play it, basically from the beginning of the second A section, 1, 2, 3, and there's space, and then that's the other phrase that comes after. So if I play my example now of what goes along with that while I sing the melody along with it, basically 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, right? So let's take a look at what that is. So, like I said, this is falling in between the phrases, and rhythmically, it's specifically hitting on the downbeat of 3 in beat 2, and you can hear it, because if I do the melody again, it's like 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, and 3, and a 4, and 1, and a 2, 3. So it makes sense to just hit it there. Feels good to me, alright? Now, the second half of bar 2, we have an A7 chord, and there's no melody note that I'm trying to match per se, because again, this is filling up space, so this is the voicing that I play. Okay, now, we've seen this shape already in the previous videos. To me, on these strings, I really see it as like a 13 flat 9 type of thing, as if it was like C 13 flat 9, but it can be a lot of other things. Now, why do I use this for A7? Well, if we think A7, like 13 flat 9, like this upper structure chord here, the 13 flat 9 is basically related to like a diminished sound, so I know that I can move that up and down in minor thirds for different harmonic variations and see how they relate over some sort of A7 chord. So if I take this chord here and I put it over the note A, basically I have the flat 9, and then the rest of it is basically an A major triad. So this chord is basically like a A triad over B flat, and I'll put this up since this is actually one of the edits that I made to my original idea, alright? So, even though this chord is filling up space, I still want to consider what note I'm putting at the top. So, I picked a chord that has this D flat note at the top, and if we look at what's going on in the melody right before, well, after really, there's our D flat. Right? So by playing this on the downbeat of 3 and then having that melody note actually coming in on the upbeat of 3, it basically, you know, accentuates that note, alright? So, after that, the next chord that comes is still pretty similar to the first A section. I played this, alright? Now, in this first A section, the part goes, and it still kind of ends on like a D minor 11 on the and of 4. So this chord that I play, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's still basically the top of that D minor 11, and I'm just putting this note on top. Now, this is not really the melody note, but I'm considering it because of the chord that I played before, alright? So, in certain situations like this, you know, it still may be good to kind of like hide the actual melody note, which is this, in the middle of the voicing, right? Because I don't think it would sound good to go 1, 2, you know, 1, 2, right? So there's my first variation. Moving along, the next variation that I have occurs in bar 4 of the second A section, and this one is a lot more subtle. Let's take a listen now to the recording at this part. Basically going to start at the beginning of bar 4 and go into bar 5 of the second A section a little bit. So check this out. Now, the phrase that Charlie Parker plays here starts out pretty similar to what he does in the first A section, but then it diverges off a little bit. He basically does this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So, in my example, I play almost the same thing in this bar as what I do in the first A section. Basically, I play this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And the only difference is this. The first two chords are identical. They still hit with the new melody, this variation of it, well. And then on the last chord, instead of playing this chord, which is like that D minor 7 flat 5 shape with this high B flat note on top, I basically do the same thing, but without that note, so the more stock version of this chord. You should know from the last video that a D minor 7 flat 5 chord being used over like a B flat basically gives you like a B flat dominant 9 sound, alright? So the reason why I omit that note is because in the second A section, the melody does this. And it lands on that note there on the and of 4, right? So, you know, I want to use that instead of, you know, like what it does in the first A section. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So that note, that's what I'm doing in the first A section, right? So it's a very subtle difference, but this is good because it shows how, you know, even tweaking basically the same chord a little bit can have a very real musical effect on what you're trying to communicate, right? So after this, I have two more new chords or variations that fall in bar 5 and 6, and we'll look at them together here. I'm going to play the recording again, starting in the same spot as before, because the first new chord here is actually filling up space, so I want you to hear the phrase that he just played that comes before it, and then I want you to hear the space, and then I want you to hear the new phrase afterwards. Alright, so here it is. Okay, so if I demonstrate this on guitar again, I'm going to start with the same first phrase, and then you'll hear the space, and then you'll hear the new phrase that comes after. So it basically sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And now I'm going to show you what I do in my example, basically adding this new part here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So let's take a look at what this is now. So, like I said before, the first new chord that I played is filling up the space between these two phrases, alright? And this is technically coming in on the and of 4 of bar 5, which harmonically speaking is really like an anticipation of the next measure, where we have A minor 7 to D7, but like I discussed in the previous video, I'm going to take that harmony and simplify it down even more to just kind of thinking of it as D7, alright? So the chord that I play is this, right? And if we look at what happens in the melody right before that, what do we got? That note, right? So I decided to play a chord that has that same note because it makes sense and it sounds good, right? And the chord that I play, this is basically, to me, I mean, if I'm thinking of it like D7, it's just like an upper structure of like a D7 with the sharp 9 and the sharp 5, right? So just no root. So the chord fits perfectly here for this situation. And if you hear me play the example again, listen to how it really pops rhythmically in the perfect spot here on the and of 4, in between the phrase that came right before and the phrase afterwards. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, now that's the next chord. So this next chord here is falling in bar 6, and this is on the and of 3, and this is the same harmony that we were basically working with before, basically a D7, and this is falling along with the melody note here when it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Right, so that note, okay, F sharp, and I play this chord. Alright, so like I said, I'm thinking D7. This is that same 13 flat 9 shape, at least, you know, you're more used to seeing it on these 4 strings over here, but let's look at what this is in relationship to a D root note. We basically have a D triad again over the E flat note, which is like the flat 9, so it's basically like a D major triad add flat 9, which works for, you know, an altered dominant chord, and it's basically exactly what we had earlier in this episode, alright? So it really sounds good with these two voicings, even just as an idea to have like 2 voicings for a dominant that hit in this place rhythmically. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, right? And also, I decided to give that one more of a longer articulation. It just made sense with the flow of the comping. So, coming from the beginning of this whole part, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then finally, the last variation that I have in the second A section is coming in measure 7 here. So let's take a listen to the recording first. Alright, and this is basically what Charlie Parker plays. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So for my example here, I basically played this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And all these chords are hitting with melody notes basically on the downbeat of 1, downbeat of 3, and then the and of 4. So the general harmony here, this is a quick 2-5. We have a half measure of G minor, half measure of C7, and then the chord that's going to fall on the and of 4, of course, is the anticipation of the next measure, which would be F major 7. So basically in the melody, that's the note on the downbeat of 1, a G, so I basically play this stock 3rd inversion G minor 7 chord, drop 2 with that note on top, alright, and then for the C7, we have this note, a C, the root note again, and I play this voicing, which is another upper structure, basically like a C7 with a sharp 5, right, with the root up here, okay? And then for the and a 4, implying an F major, I play this chord, what's the melody? An F, right? And this chord here, it looks like a D minor 11 chord, basically the relative minor of F major, so it works for F major. And look how it's like, these are all very common stock voicings, but it's all about the way you put them together, and you get these nice sounding variations where the voice leading sounds good, the rhythm sounds good, it's very musical. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? After this, the rest of the second A section basically just leads into the bridge, so I'll save that for the next episode. So there's only a few things to look at now in the third A section of this tune. So the first variation is basically in bar 1 of the third A section, and it's technically actually coming in the and a 4 in the bar before. It's an anticipation, so if we kind of listen to the last phrase of the bridge going into the last A section here, here's the recording. Right, so he's basically playing this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Right, so that's the and a 4 right there, and I'm harmonizing that note. So if I'm thinking F major 7, that's the 5th, C, and I just play this, basically this upper structure, like C, F major 6-9 chord, right? Like a chordal voicing too. So I'm going along with the melody. Alright, now after this, a lot of the third A section and what I do in my example is actually pretty similar to the first, so there's not too much really left to cover in terms of variation. But if I were to basically skip ahead to the next new part with variation, that would occur in bar 6 of the third A section. So let's take a listen now to the recording to see what's going on. Alright, so this next new phrase here, which is basically how the melody ends for the most part, sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Right? And this is basically what I play in my example, basically to finish out the little progression here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Right? So that starts in bar 6, and that first chord is coming in on the and of 1. It's hitting with a melody note, basically the first note of that phrase. Right, so that note right there, okay? And the harmony here, we kind of think what we were thinking before, basic D7. I'm basically playing this chord that has that note on top. It can be thought of as like a D7 with a flat 5, with the flat 5 in the root, or you can just think tritone sub, A flat 7 with the flat 5, right? It's basically the same thing, but that's the chord that I'm playing, and that has a nice, you know, almost muddy in a good way type of sound to me in that register there, and it fits the melody perfectly. 1, and then the next chord there is coming on the and of 4, which again is an anticipation of the next measure, G minor 7, and this is just a stock G minor 7 in second inversion with that melody note on top. So what does it do? So the next chord I play, it's actually harmonizing the next note that comes in the melody right after, because it's like, but I'm harmonizing this note there, and that's basically a D diminished 7th, which is the same thing as a tonic diminished in this key, F diminished 7th, right? So it kind of works as another variation for a cadence to go to the 1, so we add both on the and, so the first one was on the and of 4, syncopating, and then this one is on the and of 2, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And then finally, we end in bar 7 here, resolving to the tonic on the strong, heavy downbeat with this nice F major 6 type of chord, where I'm playing root, 5th, 3rd, 6th, root, right? And that's the melody note on top. Dun, dun. So I basically just harmonize that and let it ring out, alright? So I know I rushed through that there at the end, but hey, I'm giving you a lot of good examples here for free, so hope you're appreciating all this. So we're gonna leave it there today. Hope everyone enjoyed that. If anyone has anything they want to say or any questions, please put it in the comments. I'm here to help. And in the next episode,
hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.
most likely going to be wrapping up this little sub lesson on breaking down this comping example here. All I really have left to cover is the bridge, so it shouldn't take that long, hopefully, and then we can go on to other interesting things from there. Alright, so that's it. If you guys enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a like. Consider becoming a subscriber as well as a contributor to Patreon, where you'll get all the PDFs on this channel for only $5 a month. And if you think anyone else would enjoy the content, please share it with them as well. And I will see you guys in episode 78.
Swinging and playing the blues. That's what we about.
I try to help you.